It doesn't matter that this money is being managed by different financial institutions all over the world, different banks, insurance companies. There's only one pool. It doesn't matter that there's different currencies and denominations. It all winds up right back in the banking system. So the question becomes, how much of that process do you control as it relates to your needs? You're taking your capital and you're hiring them for a job called growth, to grow more capital, right? Those dollars, just like your vehicle, need a home. They need a warehouse to shelter them, to protect them, and to create growth. And when you have an opportunity, we access that capital and we go take advantage of the opportunity. So we always need a warehouse for our capital. We're all pumping money through a system. It's called the banking system, and someone else owns and controls that system. What we need to be doing is pumping capital into a system that we own and we control at a profitable business that we co-own. We're going to pour a very strong foundation. Think about anything that you want to build, any building. Imagine the stronger the foundation, the higher the building can go, the stronger that building can go. So not only do we want to build a strong foundation for our banking system, we want to build a strong foundation of knowledge. So we need to set the tone and build a strong foundation. And that's exactly what we're going to do right now. Before we get started and get into all kinds of numbers and all that fun stuff, we're going to prime our brains a little bit. So we're going to do a little bit of a thought experiment. I'm going to ask a few questions. So go ahead and answer this question for us. What's your best guess? Who revolutionized the automobile industry with the Model T? Okay, well done. Henry Ford. Who created amusement parks and pioneered the cartoon films, including Mickey Mouse? Oh, I let the cat out of the bag there, Dan. I'm so excited.
It's Walt Disney. That's
awesome.
Coming in.
Okay, let's see what happens now this time, Dan. So who revolutionized a process to enable you to become your own banker?
R. Nelson Nash.
You're absolutely right. It was R. Nelson Nash. And I have to say that I'm just blessed beyond the definition of a good fortune that this gentleman existed, but not only that he existed, I'm extremely inspired by his story, and I'll share more about that as we go through, like how the process of becoming your own banker actually came to be. Now, this is a quote that Nelson Nash coined back in 1994, once he finally got what he called snakes and dragons, the bankers, out of his life. He said, what a peaceful, stress-free way of life it is when you get the bankers out of your life. R. Nelson Nash. Now, by the end of this, you'll know that you are capable of becoming your own banker. You'll have clarity on the problem, the solution, and here's the most important part. It's what you can do. We need to focus on what we can control in life. Everything else is outside of our control. There's nothing we can do. So it's all about what you can do. You'll feel like this. I found hope and a new belief in a way that I could create my own peaceful, stress-free financial life. And that's exactly how I felt when I discovered this book, Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. I thought, you know, when you hear something that really just hits home for you, that's exactly how I felt when I read Nelson's book. When I got attached to this message, I thought, this is it. Now, what's the opposite of stress-free? Has anyone ever felt like this before? I feel like this from time to time. Okay, we've all been there. So now you've been told to put your money in things like mutual funds, commodities, stocks, and bonds. You know, we consume what is put in front of us. We've been told that these are good instruments. Now, I'm not here to say that they're not good instruments, depending on the objective, but we don't have to put our money into a financial prison. We've been told to put our money away for decades and decades and give someone else control over it who thinks they can do better with it than we can. And we don't have to. You put your money effectively in a prison in someone else's bank. Now, let those words sink in. Someone else's. So who's setting the rules? Who's in the control? It's else, not you. So you're putting your money in someone else's bank, and then you need to go to their bank and hat in hand and hope that you can get access to more money when you need it. And it's just absurd. You're the one doing all the work. I'm telling you, if you've been handing control of your money to someone else, you might not be in the best situation right now. But it's okay, because it's not your fault. It's not your fault. We do the best we can with the knowledge and resources that we have. And I've got some questions for you. Are you committed to discovering becoming your own banker? Now, more importantly, if you're committed to discovering becoming your own banker, are you willing to commit to improve anything that you're now doing that is preventing you from becoming your own banker. I want to hear, are we committed to discovering the process of becoming your own banker? And are we committed to doing whatever it takes to become our own banker? Welcome to commitment and enjoy your stay. I got to share this real quick. I've shared this often. I heard many years ago, a gentleman by the name of John Assaraf, when I first discovered YouTube, I was a little behind on the technology. Okay. This is back in about 2011. And he said, the difference between being committed to something and being interested in things, like everybody's interested in doing better financially. Everyone might be interested in becoming your own banker. But when you're interested in things, you let life get in the way. You let roadblocks stop you from creating what it is that you want to create. You take your best advantage away, which is what you can control, and things don't happen. But when you're committed to things have a way of moving out of the way. Opportunities have a way of showing up. You're going to go over, round, and through. You're going to talk to the right people. You're going to get coaches. You're going to do what you have to do when you're committed. And that means that you're willing to put in the time, effort, and energy. It's not like, oh, I tried that once. I looked at that once. I read that book once. I tried that for a month. It didn't work out. It's not how it works that way when you're committed to things. And when you're committed, things happen. I discovered the path to a peaceful, stress-free financial life the hard way. And if I can sort of just take you back and tell you a little bit about my own background. Now, there's nothing good, bad, right or wrong about this, but I don't come from money. Okay. We have many generations of poverty in my family. And again, we're blessed to be here in Canada. It's far worse for many people across the world. But as it relates to first world, we were not in a great situation growing up and for many generations. And so I always knew that I kind of wanted more. I was lucky that way. Higher power of your choice. God blessed me with thinking a little bit differently as a kid. I used to observe. I would look at my family members and I would look at people around my area, and I would think like, gosh, like my mom and dad are telling me that I can do whatever it is that I want with my life, and I see that they're not happy and they're not doing with their life what they want to do. What's that about? And I started to ask these questions and discover those kind of things for myself. And I was lucky because throughout my life, I always sort of had some sort of a teacher or a mentor, or somebody would show up, some sort of a mistake or a lesson, or I would get hurt. And luckily I would have the perspective that, oh, that was not very comfortable, that thing that happened, but it actually made me stronger. I look back now and I go, oh, I wouldn't want to experience that again, but I'm very grateful that that thing happened, right? Like when I was really young, I was competing in boxing and I lost a boxing match and I was absolutely devastated. And I thought I was the worst human ever. And I thought losing isn't that insane that we think that way, that losing is a bad thing, or learning, as I like to say now. But luckily I had good coaches and good mentors and people who brought me up. Now I tried to go play football in university. The football was great, but the whole book smart thing was not for me. I just wasn't mentally prepared to take on that challenge, and it didn't work out very well. So I got out of school, I came out to Alberta, and I went directly into the construction industry. Now, there's nothing wrong with construction, especially if you choose that. I know some people who are so passionate about what they do, and they're really good at what they do. Now, I have a few skills from time to time because I learned that, and I get to bring that with me into my life too. But I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. I wasn't in a powerful environment. I was around people who were really frustrated and feeling trapped with their lives. And I just had this intuition to know, okay, if I stick around, my environment is having an impact on what I'm creating in my life. So I was really afraid. I didn't have the courage to go to school or to challenge myself that way. But luckily, I discovered started reading books, and believe it or not, the first book that I ever read cover to cover when I was about 25 years old was a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm sure many people have read this book, but I always had it that I wasn't a good reader. Pick up this book and I'm like, oh, I want to be a rich dad. I was a young father at the time. And I was like, I could read this. I understand what this man is saying. I can comprehend what's going on here. And that put me on a path of personal development and business development and, learning about becoming self-employed and the business owner and all that kind of stuff. And, everything got better from there. It was great. No, I'm kidding. It was horrific. That's actually where the most pain came in, because I'm a human being and I was young and I was extremely impatient and I wanted everything right now. And I didn't put the time and energy into the learning, and I didn't give the value that was required in time. You can't replace time, right? That experience. So I jumped into things. I didn't always study and research beforehand. I racked up a lot of debt trying to take big swings at investments and taking a lot of risk, and they didn't work out very well. Now, in the process of all that, around age 27, about 11 years ago, not to age myself too much, you can see all my wisdom over here. I wanted to do something better. I was starting to get a little bit of courage, and I started to discover, oh, I actually have a say in how my life goes. I don't know about you, but I didn't know that growing up. I just thought it was how it was going to be. I am how I am, or I am who I am, or whatever. Luckily, I discovered that I actually have a say in how life goes. And, that takes time as well to create that. And so I decided, you know what? I want to do something more. I want to make a difference for people. I want to help people deal with the struggles that my family dealt with and what we're dealing with right now. We want to get better at managing our finances and becoming and creating wealth. So I got into the financial services industry. And at the time, I actually had no idea that I was going to be doing insurance or any of those kinds of things. I thought naively that I was going to be, helping people do budgets and restructure their finances and restructure their debts and that kind of thing, and pay off debt and what have you. There's no shot at the industry or anything like that. I'm extremely grateful. The tools and the products that we, position, or that the traditional financial advisor or insurance advisor will position with families will help that family. They solve problems. But I found out that the thing that they wanted me to do wasn't about actually helping people get better and have more peace of mind outside of selling a product. You got to sell or die. And so I had a lot of difficult time with that because I wanted to make a difference. I knew that I was in the right industry, but I wasn't in the right system. I wasn't in the right process. So I struggled a lot in the first 3 quarters of my career in this on this path. I really was just trying to find my way, trying to find the right process for me. And now looking back, I realized A, I didn't have the right process, and B, I actually didn't have coaches and mentors that could show me a path. I was really just trying to figure this thing out all on my own. And I continued to make my own financial mistakes. And what I did was I focused on term life insurance with families and critical illness insurance. And because that's what spoke to me. I didn't want to sell mutual funds or anything like that. Because again, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad and it just didn't speak to me. I thought this doesn't make sense. So I had to maintain that license, but I never sold those products or positioned that stuff. I just focused on life insurance and a little whole life policies for kids. And in 2013, I discovered R. Nelson Nash's book. And again, you'd think from there, hey, I found the path. Here we go. Everything got better. But again, I didn't do the work. I didn't get the right coach. I didn't actually put in the time and effort. So I continued to struggle. It wasn't until around 2017 when I was literally almost on my way out of this business. I thought, I can't do this anymore as much as I want to. Luckily for me, my lovely wife, Crystal, completely had my back and supported me. And she would pick me up and dust me off day after day and say, you got this, you can do this. You just have to keep pushing forward because there's more to life than just paying the bills and keeping the lights on. Like, we want to create something here. So luckily for me, I had that foundation, and my 2 beautiful kids always believed in me. And so around 2017, I picked up my course material. I started to dive in and study, and I learned about the process of becoming your own banker. I got my authorized infinite banking practitioner certificate, if you will. And, again, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. So in 2018, I met my first mentor in the process of becoming your own banker, which is Richard Canfield. And he's a member of our team. You've probably seen him on the Wealth Without Bay Street podcast. And a year later or so I worked with Richard for a little bit, and then I called him and I said, look, I just want to be a part of a team. I want to do something more. Because at the time, Richard was kind of doing his own thing. And he said, hey, you know what? I'm going to introduce you to Jason Lowe. So since October of 2019, I was officially contracted with Ascendant Financial because Jason and I hit it off. And he said, look, if you want to be a part of this team, we would love to have you. And I said, hey, if you'll have me on this team, I'll do whatever it takes to transform some lives. And he believed me, luckily. So now here I am sitting in front of you, and I'm happy to say I've expanded our family banking system now to 11 policies, which you'll have a lot more context for what I mean by that by the end. But we now control the entire banking function as it relates to our needs. We went from being stressed financially and having debt and wondering how we're going to get out of debt and even create something, let alone, be able to actually control and increase our wealth. And every single day that goes by, our wealth increases and we control all the flow of the capital. There's no more people going into our bank account and pulling money out. We're the one who controls that entire function, and that capital is flowing back to our family so that we get use and control over that capital. So thanks for letting me share all that. I shared all that today to let you know that you can do that exact same thing, regardless of where you're at today. If you're doing really well financially, then this process will just radically enhance what you're already doing, give you a tailwind, and push you even further faster. If you're not doing so well today, just by changing your habits and your behavior and getting a good coach and implementing this process over time, your situation will radically enhance, just the way that I described for my own. As I was saying earlier, I didn't realize, even like, most people think that they need someone else to handle their money, to take care of their money. Most people believe that it's necessary to take risk in order to grow their money. Just like I said earlier, I was taking big swings. I didn't realize that most people know next to nothing about the process of banking and its importance. That word should be bold and highlighted. Importance to their lives and their well-being. And that's what happened for me and my family. Just by changing the banking process, everything got better. Here's the truth. Truth number one, the difference between you being stressed and relaxed financially is who controls the banking function in your life. And as I said, speaking directly from experience here. Truth number two, you don't have to put your money in a prison for decades and rely on someone else to achieve the financial abundance that you deserve today. Now, truth number three, you don't have to be rich to become your own banker. As I described earlier, did I sound rich when I got started? Absolutely not. Now, this is an important question. Who is this process actually for? Well, it's for you. It's for you, everyone on this call, because everybody in Canada today has the need for the use of money, and everybody has the need for the use of banking. So this process, becoming your own banker, the infinite banking concept, it's for you. Now, as I said earlier, we're going to dive into how did infinite banking actually get started. What we're going to do here is we're going to take you back in time. Now, you may be familiar with this, you may have experienced it, or maybe you heard your parents or grandparents talk about it, depending on your age. But in the 1980s, inflation rates started to skyrocket. And by the way, if you're in Canada today, does that sound familiar? Inflation rates started to skyrocket, interest rates started to expand, and R. Nelson Nash, at the time, the founder, the pioneer of the process of becoming your own banker, what inspires me the most about R. Nelson Nash is that he discovered this process through his own financial ruin. He was doing very well. He was in the life insurance industry. He was doing real estate. He was, buying properties, and he was investing. And, people told him, the financial gurus just said, hey, you know what? If you buy these properties and you hang on to them and you flip them or you rent them, all you have to do is pay the interest to the bank. And, when you flip the property, you get all the profit. And actually, Nelson did very well. Things were going pretty good. But what he didn't know, or what wasn't told to him, is, well, what happens when the interest rate lever goes the other way? So Nelson was stuck with over $500,000 of mortgage debt when prime rate went up to almost 21.5%. And I don't know about you, but I don't have prime rate. It's always prime plus. He had prime plus. So he was paying 23% interest on these mortgages. And he was struggling financially just to try and, service those debts. And like he said, appease the snakes and dragons who were abusing him. So he was literally on his knees praying for a solution. And so that's how he started to discover the process of becoming your own banker. He realized that he could actually access cash values from his policy system. He had already become accustomed to paying large life insurance premiums for many, many years into these dividend paying, participating whole life policies, where he realized he could access policy loans at 6 and 8% and pay off the snakes and dragons who were abusing him at 23%. So he started to implement this process, and everybody thought he was a little crazy, including his wife, Mary, because instead of, when he would get a windfall or liquidating or whatever and paying off debt, he would actually start more policies and build up his banking system, because he knew something. He saw something that everyone else didn't see. He saw that he was actually pumping money. We're all pumping money through a system. It's called the banking system, and someone else owns and controls that system. So Nelson realized he was pumping all of his capital through the system in the wrong direction. What we need to be doing is pumping capital into a system that we own and we control at a profitable business that we co-own. And that's exactly what Nelson started to do. Now, everyone needs a heart. Would you agree? I want to tell you a story here about Nelson. I could be a little off on this date, but I believe after he started to implement the process and started to make that progress around 1989, he had a quarter bypass surgery. And the doctors had to do the good work that they do. And Nelson was really great at creating analogies. And what they did is they opened his chest cavity up and they took his heart out of his chest, and he actually was hooked up to something called a heart and lung machine. And the heart and lung machine is, the job of it is to circulate the blood through his body, just like his heart would do, but his heart was getting worked on. So obviously Nelson didn't remember this experience because he was heavily sedated. But when he came out of it and he was, healthy again, he realized, being on that heart and lung machine, he wasn't actually living. He was merely existing. He was just surviving. And he actually equated being on that heart and lung machine, that heart and lung machine was pumping the energy through his body and keeping him alive. And he was reliant on that heart and lung machine. He said that that is similar to people being reliant on someone else to perform the banking function, because that's the job of the bank. It's to circulate the money and flow it into the economy where it needs to go. And we're abdicating that responsibility to somebody else. That was what Nelson realized is giving somebody else control over the banking function is merely surviving financially. You're just existing. You're not actually living. So once we start to implement the process, that's how we can actually live and thrive and benefit from the banking process. You see, banking is the most important business in the world. As I said, just like the heart, the banking process, not necessarily the banking system, the process of banking is meant to circulate capital, meant to circulate money throughout the economy. And that's why we want to control that process. The banking system pumps money through the system where it's needed most. And at some point, the money is going to flow through your hands and mine. And eventually, where is it going to end up? Where does it all end up? Well, it ends up right back in the banking system. Just think about any transaction you've ever had. And we're going to expand on this as we go. But when I purchase a vehicle, I give the cash to the dealer. Well, what do they do with that cash? They put it right back in the banking system. It always winds up back in the banking system. Now, the issue here is how much of the banking function do you control as it relates to your needs? Remember, there's actually only one pool of money in the entire world. There's only one pool of money in the entire world. Now, I want to give you an analogy to think about. Think about a globe. Picture the globe. Now, there's, the Indian Ocean, there's the Pacific Ocean, there's the Atlantic Ocean, Mediterranean, there's rivers, lakes, there's streams, there's bodies of water all over the planet, but they're actually all connected. There's only one pool of water on the entire globe. The water evaporates, it gets picked up through clouds, it gets moved over to a different part of the world, and it snows and sleet and hail. If you're in Alberta, you know exactly what I'm talking about because we're getting drilled right now. Hopefully the weekend gets a little bit nicer. But eventually, some of that water will flow through you and me, just like that capital, but it all ends up right back in the ocean. There's only one pool of water. There's only one pool of money in the entire world. And it doesn't matter if there's a transaction happening over, if it's in China or the UK or Canada, the United States, it doesn't matter that this money is being managed by different financial institutions all over the world, different banks, insurance companies. There's only one pool. It doesn't matter that there's different currencies and denominations. It all winds up right back in the banking system. So the question becomes, how much of that process do you control as it relates to your needs? As I said earlier, Nelson, like I said, pumping money. We're all earning an income. That money's coming from somewhere and it has to go into a system. It has to flow into a bank, and that bank should be yours. He was pumping money into the system in the wrong direction. Now, he had to go through bankers and toll takers and gatekeepers who were all making money off of him. Why? Because there's money to be made in the banking process, and somebody should make that money, and that somebody should be you. They were all abusing him. Now, let me ask you, has that ever happened to you? He realized that he needed to crank up large life insurance premiums, and he was already doing that. He was cranking up large life insurance premiums and building up this system that was going to build capital that he owned and he controlled. Now, this is really important, folks. A lot of times people ask me, they say, Vern, this all sounds great, but what are the downsides? And I always, I'm actually being dead serious, but I half joke with people and I say, well, the downside is that you're a human being, and human beings are impatient. As I mentioned earlier, when I was younger, I wanted everything now, but we know how quickly does time go? It just blows by. So we can't do this overnight. Everyone thought Nelson was crazy, including his wife, Mary, as I mentioned earlier. Now, you have to get this done incrementally over a period of time. You know, I have, like I said, I've built my policy system now up to 11 policies. Well, I didn't start with 11 policies. I didn't start with large premium. I just started where I could start. And I built this system up over time. So it takes time and it takes commitment, but we can start implementing the process immediately and starting to enhance what we're already doing financially today. Now, this is extremely important. Again, this process requires you to not only think differently, but it requires you to think about your thinking. In every financial play, there are four characters in the financial play. Anything that you do financially today, whether you're financing a vehicle, if you're buying a stock, if you're investing in cryptocurrencies, there's four characters in a financial play. The first character is a depositor. Now, everybody in Canada today is a depositor. Doesn't matter where that money's coming from, it needs to be deposited before you can access it and use it. Everyone is a borrower. Now, here's a teaching point for you. What do we mean by a borrower? Because you might be on the call thinking, well, Vern, I'm here to learn about banking, but I'm debt free. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have any car loans, no lines of credit cards. No, that's rare for many people, but I have run into many people who say, yeah, no, I don't have any debt. I've got capital. I want to create my wealth. They say, I'm not a borrower. I don't borrow money. Well, Nelson taught us that you're either going to pay interest to someone else because you borrowed from their pool of capital, or if you use your own capital, you're permanently transferring that financial energy away. The growth potential on those dollars, what it could have grown into, is lost forever. Someone else's bank has harnessed that energy. So you're either paying interest to someone else, or you're permanently giving up the opportunity to earn interest. So we're always dealing with borrowed money. Now, the third character in the financial play is the banker. Well, what does the banker do? The banker is the one who is going to grant you access to that capital. They're going to tell you how much you're going to pay, when you're going to pay, for how long you're going to pay, and how much interest you're going to pay. They set all of the rules. And if you don't fulfill on your end of the bargain, you don't own anything until that financial transaction is complete, until the final payment's made. So they have all the control. What about the bank owner? The bank owner is the one earning or making most of the money. By the end of this boot camp, you're going to discover that by implementing the process of becoming your own banker, we can become all four characters in the financial play: the depositor, the borrower, the banker, and the bank owner. Now, remember the golden rule. Now, there's a really good golden rule: treat others how you want to be treated, but this is not the golden rule that we're talking about. People have abdicated the responsibility and the opportunity. That's more important, not just the responsibility, but the opportunity that, as it pertains to the banking function in the economy. They're depending on someone else to perform that job. And that character in the play is making the most money. So let that sink in. And rightfully so, because of the golden rule. He or she who has the gold makes the rules. So if you have the gold, you make the rules. So we want to put the gold back in your hands. The person on the street in Canada today understands the subject so poorly. He's doing the equivalent to living off a heart and lung machine. Again, nobody out there is talking to you. No financial advisors are talking to you about banking. They're not talking to you about the flow of the capital and who controls it. So what I want to talk to you about today is how you can create a system in which you can control everything about the banking function as it relates to your needs. Now, I want to point this book out. As I showed you earlier, you've probably seen this before, but if not, this book, Becoming Your Own Banker, Unlocking the Infinite Banking Concept, was self-published by R. Nelson Nash back in the early 2000s. And I believe the number is over 500,000 now, 500,000 copies sold for a self-published book. Now, why is that? Why would that many copies be sold? Well, it's because it works. If it didn't work, they wouldn't be selling copies and people wouldn't be implementing the process and you wouldn't be here today. So it works. Now, you want to go ahead and get yourself a copy. I'm sure we'll post a link, or you've probably already received an email or a text with a link to purchase your copy of R. Nelson Nash's book. You can get it anywhere you like, but we ship it anywhere in Canada, and we'll get it in your hands in a couple of days. So go ahead and get your copy. Now, the very first principle that must be understood is that you finance everything that you buy. I'm going to let that sink in. That's the founder of our company, Jason Lowe, with R. Nelson Nash there. He mentored directly under Nelson. They were very, very close. And so we're lucky to have Nelson, but we're lucky to have Jason because he worked with Nelson for many years. And so that's Jason in a flight simulator there with our Nelson Nash. You either pay interest to somebody else or you otherwise give up the interest you could have earned. Every time you spend your own capital, it's permanently gone forever. We've interrupted any growth that was there and it's gone. You can never get it back. And there are no exceptions to this. You either pay up or you give up, period. The whole idea is to recapture the interest that one is paying to banks and finance companies for major items that you need to finance during your lifetime. And even the principal payments. Do you want to pay zero interest for your car financing for the rest of your life? It's not about the interest though. I mean, it's great to recapture that interest, but that payment, $500 a month, it's still capital. It's permanently transferring that energy away. And the interest lost on that payment is also what we want to recapture by implementing the process of becoming your own banker. The objective is to keep the money in the family. I think about my kids. I think about their unborn grandkids. They're going to need to go out and do all of the same things that I've done. They're going to get a job and or a business, and they're going to go and finance things, and they're going to get weddings and cars and all those kinds of stuff. They're going to get married, and all that money is going to flow away. But we're building a banking system to keep that capital in the family. We're controlling the banking function. The question is though, how much of the banking function do you control as it relates to your needs currently? Who's granting you access to the capital? Who's dictating the terms on that capital? Your money must reside somewhere. Now, what do I mean by your money must reside somewhere? A lot of times people kind of get lost a little bit in this because we talk about saving money or building a warehouse or piling up cash. We know that money capital is flowing to and through someone else's bank. We know that. A lot of times we talk to investors and they say things like, well, Vern, I don't pile up money in the bank. I don't keep money in the bank. I invest it all, or I do this, or I do that. I understand that. Now, if you invest money, that's great. What about when you sell a home and you get a windfall of capital? What about if you're doing private lending and you receive a promissory note and that capital comes back? Where does that capital reside? Where does it get deposited and stored between now and you finding your next deal? If the answer is someone else's bank, then you're missing an opportunity today to enhance your family's wealth and give you even more control and access to capital. Your wealth must reside somewhere. My friend and colleague, Richard Canfield, uses a great analogy. He says, if you have a garage at home, you park your car in the garage and it's stored there. It's protected. It's protected from the elements until you get up and you need to go to work the next day. You take the car and you go to work. Now you've put the car to work. The car is outside the warehouse. And then when you come back, you park it back in the garage. It's no different than with your dollars. You're taking your capital and you're hiring them for a job called growth, to grow more capital, right? Those dollars, just like your vehicle, need a home. They need a warehouse to shelter them, to protect them, and to create growth. And when you have an opportunity, we access that capital and we go take advantage of the opportunity. So we always need a warehouse for our capital. So your wealth, your capital must reside somewhere. Someone must perform the function of banking in your life. Somebody has to grant you access, and that somebody should be you. And that's what this process is all about. This process is also something else to point out. And I'm going to give you a quick visual here. I'm going to show this book, The And Asset for Canadians. This process is what we refer to as an and process. It's not an either or. Becoming your own banker is not about addressing a yield on an investment. It's all about how we go about financing things that we need throughout our lifetime that certainly can include investments. When you access capital to purchase an investment like a cryptocurrencies or a private lending or a piece of real estate, that's a process of banking. That is a financing function. So the process of becoming our own banker is all about how we go about financing anything that we need, including cars or whatever else, assets, okay?